Democrats, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to combat the lies of the Democrat shields. And the reason why we have to do this is because when we say they're lying to you, they really are.
Inside Yemen in hopes of stopping their attacks on vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. US Central Command says its forces destroyed 2 Houthi anti-ship missiles aimed at the critical waterway that were prepared to launch. A White House National Security Council spokesperson says the ongoing strikes are taking away capability from the Iran-backed militants. But a Houthi spokesperson said the group will not stop going after vessels they believe are linked to Israel and called the attacks by the US and the UK a, quote, persistent act of aggression. The US president admitted Thursday that the Houthis remain undeterred.
Due this morning, the U.S. Military Central Command now says U.S. fighter aircraft shot down an anti-ship cruise missile that was fired at a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Red Sea from a Houthi-controlled area of Yemen. And this comes just days after the U.S. and the U.K. launched strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. The militant group vowed to retaliate.
Taking you now to the House of Commons, where we're hearing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak speaking. Let's listen in.
They fired on our ships and our sailors. It was the biggest attack on the Royal Navy for decades. And so we acted. We did so in self-defense, consistent with the UN Charter, and to uphold freedom of navigation, as Britain has always done. Alongside the United States, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, we ordered the RAF to strike 2 Houthi military facilities in Yemen. I want to be clear that these were limited strikes. They were carefully targeted at launch sites for drones and ballistic missiles to degrade the Houthis' capacity to make further attacks on international shipping.
With Israel's genocide in Gaza, you have all of these non-state actors, groups like Hezbollah and the Iraqi PMF and the Houthis, as they're called, are Ansar Allah in Yemen. Well, I guess that is kind of the state right now. But all that said, I mean, these are all organizations that are very much organic and indigenous to their areas and consider themselves resistance groups. But you have this portrayal in the US media that actually, like, Iran is, because Iran is allied with these groups, is partnered with these groups, is actually puppeteering them. They're all just Iranian proxies that answer to the Ayatollah, and that includes Hamas. Hamas is portrayed the same way in US media. And as a result, everything that happens, whether it's Ansar Allah intervening by blocking ships that are heading towards Israel in the Red Sea to try to pressure the end to this genocide with economic consequences, or whether you have this sort of tit-for-tat violence taking place between Hezbollah and the Israelis in South Lebanon, or whether we're talking about the various Iraqi groups firing at American positions in Iraq and Syria, or Hamas fighting the Israelis, all of this is portrayed as Iran's hand. And so people are concerned that this could lead, if it continues, because all these groups are saying, as long as there's a genocide in Gaza, we will continue to hit at American and Israeli targets until the genocide ends. All this is being portrayed wrongly in the American media as Iran, and this could lead to a hot war with Iran. So I'm just curious, what is your take on what I just described, the potential escalation of a broader regional war that everybody's so concerned about, and how it's being portrayed in U.S. media?
Well, you're right, Rania. And I think it's important to talk about this thing of portraying all these resistance forces as simply proxies for Iran. I mean, in a way, you can understand why the U.S. does that, because the forces allied with the U.S. are essentially mercenaries. They don't believe in anything. They don't fight for anything that they believe in. They get money, and there's actually many reports of mercenaries currently being used in Israel in the genocide of Gaza. And so the U.S. kind of assumes that, well, these other forces are the same. But the other component, though, and the other reason that the U.S. wants to look at it like that is just part of Iran versus Israel, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, is to dismiss the authentic, character of these movements. These are movements of people who put their lives on the line for their beliefs. And in particular, I want to emphasize the resistance in Yemen and the solidarity that the Yemenis are showing for Palestine. I mean, Yemen, having gone through 7 years of Saudi bombings and occupation and destruction, poverty levels of about 50%, and the economy in shambles and so forth. I mean, if you told me in mid-October that the Yemenis are going to play a significant role in solidarity with the people of Gaza, I would have laughed like Rania is laughing right now. And it's amazing, how could you be a people in so much hardship, in so much difficulty, disease, starvation, yet make it a priority to show solidarity, not in words, not by making statements, but in action with the people of Gaza. And if we have time, we can talk a little bit more about what those actions are. But the fact is, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Ansar Allah or the Houthis in Yemen or Hamas, these are genuine resistance movements. We could talk in detail about them and who they get support from, but none of these forces are proxies of Iran. Right?
Hamas attackers are animals, but the real culprit here is Iran. Without aid from Iran, there would be no Hamas capability to attack Israel. I think it is long past time for the United States to put Iran on notice that you have killed and destroyed enough that you're going to pay a price.
The second Biden lifted the sanctions, the worst thing he ever did.
On Iran.
Because he fueled Hamas, he fueled Houthis, he fueled Hezbollah, and Iran was the better for it. So we first need to get those sanctions back on Iran the way we should. China's giving them billions. We've got to stop that. The second thing is take out those centers that are allowing those missiles to hit. Take out the drone areas in Iraq and Syria that's allowing that to happen. We know where they are. And then the third thing is, we don't need to go and hit Iran hard. You need to hit them smart. Take out a couple of the IRGC members making these decisions. Iran doesn't care whether they lose fighters. They'll get more. They don't care if they lose missiles. They'll get more. What they do care about is if they lose their money and if they lose their leadership. That's what we need to be focused on.